Wembley was famous country city. I'm going to Wembley. Wembley, we're the famous country city. I'm going to Wembley.
Hello, you're listening to The Neil Lampton Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And Neil.
Hi, guys.
Let's have your moments of the week. Neil, do you want to start us off?
Joey Crone. We won a cup. We won a trophy yesterday. And it was clearly the best thing that's ever happened to me as a Coventry City supporter.
Yeah.
So as a broad piece, yes, we won a cup, so that is a moment of the week, and I'm absolutely delighted about it. As a small sort of, we like to go quite nuanced in this thing. I still couldn't quite believe we were there. It didn't feel real for a long, long time. But then there was just a moment when I walked out from sort of the concourse into Wembley for the first time, and I had a look, and it was absolutely packed. And within a minute, they started playing Sweet Caroline. And it's just everybody was so happy. And I got there and I thought, there we go. Yeah, we're here now. And from that point onwards, it was just, it was such a magnificent couple of hours. It was hard work watching it, but it was terrific. It was so good, so good.
I'm just stunned that on every level that it lived up to even the grandest of expectations, didn't it?
Well, that's what's crazy, because I think when you look at it from afar, and I know when I've looked at the competitions before, and you see people at Wembley and you see it as a Checker Trade Trophy or whatever it is, and you kind of think, yeah, I can see you're happy, but it's kind of almost a facade of happiness. But yesterday, even though I felt like I would manage to keep it in control because of where we are in the league and all that sort of stuff, actually, when you're there, when you're immersed in that behaviour, in that sort of cauldron of sky blue, and then within 10 minutes, Biggie scores. I was not ready for that goal, but that set us up then, and it was just a surreal feeling, but completely just immersive. It was fantastic.
I think you couldn't have wished for it to go much better, really, as well, could you? Because I think it was really nervy right from the off, and I think Oxford were very much in control of the game, albeit that I don't think they threatened all that often. But that to have a goal on 11 minutes?
Yeah.
That just, it means that you weren't just absolutely dying, shitting yourself of them being of having all the ball and everything. It meant that the context of it was, well, at least we're weirdly in control of it. It
helped, didn't it? Because it's like those games where, like last year we beat Crewe 5-0 away, and people say, oh, it's a great game, but actually you're on top, you don't quite get into it. By the time you scored a third goal, it's kind of, you're almost going through the motions, if you can possibly say that. Whereas yesterday it was you get those goals at certain times, they seem to mean more, and it was just it was incredible.
And you want the tension of it being, as long as you end up winning the game, retrospectively, the tension involved with that last 15 minutes is like a good thing, because it means that you've come out, like you say, the beating Crewe that day was great, as pointless as it was, but in the second half, you totally switched off.
Yeah, it's
there was
boring,
nothing going on, wasn't it?
Boring
Yeah.
winning 5-0.
Anyway, Paul, moment of the week.
Yeah, I think you make little milestones for yourself, don't you? So, obviously, one of the milestones was going to Wembley with the people I've been going to the Rico or Highfield Road with for years and years and years. And we had 4 rows about 8 wide. So basically it was like people I knew behind me, in front of me.
Yeah.
So like Joey was 2 rows in front. So it was just like we had this entire area of sort of people who you've sort of grown up with in a way. Like Pritchard starts the next to me. We've known each other since we were 17. So, you've gone through all the highs and, you've gone through the lows, the other lows and the desperate lows. And then you sit there and you're like, okay, what I want to do is someone put a really good tweet out a couple of days before. So I just want to celebrate a goal that means something, either taking the lead or an equaliser or something like that. So you're like, that's the first bit is just I want to celebrate a Cov goal that means something, not the third in a 3-1 defeat. Sorry, the consolation goal in a 3-1 defeat, but the goal, and then it's like, shit, Biggie's scored. And you're like, okay, let's get to half time. I want to still be in the lead at half time, so at least we've won a half. Well, shit, we won. We're still 1-0 up. And you're like, okay, there's a couple of players I'd really like to have good games. One of them's George Thomas. It'd be really nice if, oh fuck, he's just done that. We're 2-0 up. And you're like, this is just, and both goals, Mary's, like Jane and my wife, my youngest daughter, who slept through the first 45 minutes, were at one end of the aisle, but Mary wanted to stand with me, so I had her sort of stood on the seat in front of me.
Mary, your oldest daughter, for anyone unaware. Yeah,
Mary's 4, and it's like I've celebrated 2 goals at Wembley, basically by just protecting my daughter from getting leapt upon by everyone I know. You're like, this is just how you want it to be.
Yeah.
And then by about 5 minutes before the end, it was like, Kate came over to sort of say hello, and I sent them back down towards their mother, knowing that, when the final whistle went, I'm a big guy, but I'm not that big, and I knew the carnage was going to be massive. And you're just like, well, no one's kidding ourselves. We know it's the Checkatrade Trophy, but there were 43,000 Cov fans there yesterday, and just winning a trophy, just being at Wembley and winning a trophy, just meant so much to everyone, and it just gave everyone a lift. Like, just the atmosphere of being, there was virtually no negativity at all.
Yeah,
and you're just like, that's just so unusual for a Cov game, and to have that many people all positive, all happy. And we got the train down with Oxford fans, and the atmosphere was good. There was no animosity between the two sets of supporters. It was a really good day out. And again, it's like one of those things. I want to go to Wembley on a day when it's nice and warm. You can sit in the fan zone, have a beer, everyone can meet up. Just everything just fell into place.
Yeah, it really did. It was amazing to the level to which it all kind of clicked, especially starting out at Cov Station in the kind of nightmare zone that was. But even that seemed to go off well enough in the end. I don't think anybody was too late getting in, were they? I think there were some final people straying in, but I didn't get a sense that even that had jeopardised the quality of the day. For me, moment of the week, I'm going to split into 2, and I'm going to kind of copy yours a little bit, Paul. One, I think there was something quite special about being in the fan zone, and I was talking to Sherwin, who's your 18-year-old nephew, and Matt, who is a friend of ours, who we've kind of clung on to this season, who are both 18, and you thought, God, that was me, like 10 years ago or so, starting going with you guys, just out of nowhere, because we were a very odd ragtag bunch of people, aren't we? We kind of, everyone's been sort of stuck together, really. Nobody really knows each other, do they? You sort of half know somebody and then sort of enter the group, and you look around and then it's your young children and your wife and people's dads, and it was just really nice to see that kind of coming together, and it was just nice to sort of go, God, we've been together for so long, but without anything to really enjoy ever. This is the first day. And it was just nice that we could all be there together and do it. But I think the real, absolute, unequivocal moment of the week is the ball flying off George Thomas's leg and going in. I had no idea that the day meant anything. The day meant as much to me as it did until that went in, and I had tears in my eyes when that went in. And it was partly because I've seen us be 1-0 up so often, just so often. And my constant thing is that if we are defined by one thing on the pitch, it's going 1-0 up and losing 2-1. It just happens so frequently that I'm totally inoculated against being happy about 1-0 up. It just doesn't mean anything. To go 2-0 up, there's something hit me that just went, imagine if we threw this away. And I couldn't take it. I couldn't take the idea that we would, you just think you are built to disappoint me and us as fans. That's just what you do. And then I thought, I just can't take it if we lose. And then it occurred to me that as we've got further and further on, I was like, that's 2 academy graduates. They're Cov kids. It's like a team of Cov kids. Like, most of them have come through the academy. You just go, this is it, isn't it? Yeah. We've waited all this time, but it's still too long to wait, but it was just so worth it. And I just really didn't think it would mean as much as it did, but I was just so, like, joyously, elatedly happy. I'm just so glad that we got it, because it's been long overdue.
I mean, that's it. It's just 6 academy kids on the pitch at kick-off, and you just, like, that's... And I'm going to big us up for a bit. We've sort of championed some of these kids. Like, George Thomas was taking dogs abuse at one point. And you're like, the kid's got something. He's got something. It's just give him time. And then he produces that, and you're like, well, some of us knew he had that in his, to use a Jimmoism, he had that in his locker. He had that ability. And you watch that, and that's, we've discussed it a couple of times on here, what Kieran Crowley said about him having the ability of, or more ability than James Maddison, and being that good that Joe Cole was raving about him. And to take that touch, and if some of the players who play in the Premier League had scored that goal in the cup final, it'd be all over the press. It would just be everywhere. To take that touch and to have that much quality about him, it's just unreal. And you just hope that for some of these kids really gives them the confidence to go ahead.
And that's it.
And this is it, exactly. Go on, Neil, because I think I was going to say...
Yeah, I think we're going to make the same point. And I always make the same reference, and it's the Callum Wilson reference about there comes a point where he actually realised he belonged in the team. And I think this season we've seen the growth of George Thomas from someone who was kind of thrust into the team, and he was quite tentative early on, and it's been a gradual one. There's no huge jump where 1 week we thought, oh, actually George Thomas is now a player. It's been gradual, bit by bit. You start to see him want the ball a bit more, take players on, and that all sort of culminates in what happened yesterday, which was just to keep his calm and just trust his natural ability and natural quality, because that's what it was. That was pure instinct. Just, I'm going to control this and hit it first time, all within a split second, and to do it so well, that can only be good for him. Now he's going to come away. He's got the winner in the semi and in the final. He's got man of the match in the final. He is going to believe he is brilliant, and that is great for him, because we need George Thomas to believe he's brilliant and just to continue to progress. And I can only see scoring a goal in the final doing that for him, and I'm just delighted, like you do. Really am delighted with how he's sort of starting to show his worth.
And the other thing is, there wasn't a lone player on the pitch. There wasn't, that was our players. Those were our players. And if there's anything that you do just think, if we hadn't appointed Russell Slade, if we'd have appointed, I'll admit I was very tentative about Mark Robins, but the last couple of weeks where he hasn't done anything unbelievably brilliant. He's just done things which are really basic. Like, he's gone for Ryan Haynes and Kyle Reid on the left-hand side, and that is a partnership that clearly works for both of them. And Kyle Reid is just showing the sort of form I didn't believe he could show week in, week out. But the last couple of games, he's had good games, and he's making things happen, and he's causing the opposition problems. And you're like, well, Russell Slade didn't play those two together once. Even Mowbray at the start of the season refused to give Ryan Haynes his game and would play Lewis Page ahead of him. You're like, this team has been so badly mismanaged that when Robbins has come in and just done sensible, obvious things. I mean, the turnaround in form of Jordan Turnbull is clearly remarkable. And if you go to my Twitter feed, the clearance he makes in the first half after we go 1-0 up, where he takes the ball off that guy's head, is just phenomenal. And that's a game-changing clearance. That's the sort of thing where if they equalise then, God knows where the game goes. But making that clearance is just fantastic. I had him as my man of the match.
I did too. Turnbull /Burge.
Yeah, see, I had Lee Burge at number 1, but actually, to go on to what you were saying before, I didn't think Kyle Reid was out of the discussion there. I thought he did a really, really good job defensively. I've seen him do that twice, 3 times maybe this season, where you go, you are quite smart, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? There is like a good player in there, isn't there? But you only see it so infrequently. Be interested to know. In fact, I'm not going to say. I was going to say how close is his contract to being, but he's come alive a bit recently. And I think, Paul, you're right. I think playing with Ryan Haynes and that trying to create some partnerships on the pitch is important. I also thought it was interesting what Biggie said after the game, or to the Observer, was that he said that Robbins had been good coming in because he'd been good with the players, but he said also he's just made things way simpler than they were. He said it's just really easy to play in the formation that he's put them in, and with the jobs that they've got to do. He said it's much easier to try and do because it's just so simple. And he said that it's taken away some of the fear. I thought that was interesting because I guess we talked about it last week. If you overload players with information that aren't like top level players who are able to take it on, you're constantly just worrying about whether you're in the place that you should be. Whereas I guess in this situation, they can just be like, just get out and do it.
Exactly. They're too much in their head anyway, didn't they? We already knew that they were struggling with the belief side of things. So don't confuse them even more by having them think about where positionally they should be at every single moment. Let them do what Biggie said and just have a simple game and play in position that they all know about.
I mean, Carl Reid spent his entire career being a left midfielder, and when we bought him, and it's like you're playing him on the left of a front three. You could see it wasn't. He didn't know where to go. His natural instinct is to head towards the corner flag. When you're playing left of a front three, that doesn't help. No. But when you're a left midfielder, that's where that's your whole game is about basically corner flag to corner flag, trucking up and down. And he made one just brilliant return run where he just went with his marker. It wasn't, you were watching it going, that's what we lacked all season. It's just people doing their jobs. He's covered his fullback and he's tracked his man, and now he's just I think he just headed it away or he just cleared it, and you were like, that's just to him doing his job. He knows I play left-hand midfield, so when Coventry defending, my job is to mark their right back. And you're just like, well, that's basically, he's done what he's been doing his entire life. And it took 4 managers for us to get someone who went, Carl Reid's a left midfielder. I'll play him on the left midfield. I won't play Kwame Thomas or some Andre Wright out there. I'll play Carl Reid out there, and he'll play well as a left midfielder.
It makes me feel sick hearing Andre Wright's name. When you just think about the amount of games that he played this season, and he was just so wank, and there's the lack of games that Ben Stevenson's played and that George Thomas played earlier in the season, young kids that are ours, and you just think, oh God, even as recently as like Kevin Foley and stuff, you're just thinking, what's going on? What? Yeah. How did it ever come to that? This season has been so weird, hasn't it?
One big misjudgment.
I've got a really... Obviously, it didn't bother me, and it doesn't bother me that Callum Riley didn't play. But does anyone know why he didn't play?
Got injured, didn't he?
Was he injured?
That's what I heard. Yeah, because he very short notice sort of injury, so that messed up things a little bit. Robin said something about it, but no, Stevenson came in, didn't he?
I know we had the discussion last week on the pod. Ben Stevenson's use of the ball is just so much better than our other midfielders. He can use the ball in ways that the rest of our midfield just can't. He just simply retains possession. And at one point in the second half yesterday, it was just like, what we just need now. Oh, okay, Ben Stevenson's on the ball. I'm quite happy with this. I can deal with this. It's just his ball retention and just simple use of the ball just really aided us yesterday against let's be honest, an Oxford team who had probably the lion's share of possession, didn't they?
Oh God, yeah. They were realistically, they were a better striker, or maybe really 2 better wide players away from causing us damage. But I think a mixture of, I think we did defend well. I thought we, especially last ditch, defended really well. But I think they, this is what I said at the top of the show. On the face of it, they were in control. But I also don't think they really were. I think the fact that we were 1-0 up meant that we were quite happy to concede a level of possession. It's again what we were talking about last week. I mean, I know this is becoming like one big self-congratulatory backslap to a certain extent. But we were saying about that there are people who are obsessed with possession and the idea that you should be dominating it and everything. But actually the game has gone a different, even in vogue, it's gone a different way. Leicester won the league last season with 42% possession. It's not necessarily the be-all and end-all if your players aren't all wonderfully technically gifted. And I just thought that Oxford looked competent, but that ultimately, really, their chance was the Chris Maguire free kick that was good. Their goal was kind of like an odd goal, wasn't it? It kind of went through the legs of 4 players to go in.
The 1-on-1 was the big one, wasn't it? They got slow, and that was the only period when I felt we were losing our heads a little bit after the goal.
Yeah,
where we were a little bit rattled. There was no real sort of cohesion between the defence, and they got through, and it was 1-on-1. It was a great save by Burge. But what was telling was that of the players who were then by the box when he had the shot, I mean, 90% of them were blue. We had all the energy to get back. We were defending in that way. And I think we can be honest about our performance. I think from if you're looking at the pure sort of how we played football point of view, I think it was quite sporadic. We had some really good moments and there were good performances in patches, but it certainly wasn't performance of some of the levels that we've seen in the last couple of weeks. But I think it's the other side of the game that we even spoke about last week again. But it was that pressing, that desire, that Biggie having an absolute maniac game, just willing everything. Biggie was in another zone. He was completely spaced out yesterday, doing his own thing, and it was incredible to watch. And I would have had him as man of the match, but I thought he kind of, because of the yellow card, it kind of hindered him a little bit come the end of the game, and he wasn't able to play that same sort of forced tackling. But Big E's performance yesterday was sort of captain worthy. I thought he was just everywhere, and when he scored as well, I just love his reaction because he's obviously a very religious fella, and he just went onto another planet. So that's probably not his viewpoint that we've got other planets, but he went up and he was in God's zone. Then he was looking up, and he had people around his neck, and his eyes fixed on the heavens, and it obviously meant so much to him, and it was just I like him being like that. If that Biggie in the zone is a great player.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
On the Biggie thing, I really hate, and Michael Afton did it yesterday after the game, where he talked about basically they weren't good enough in both boxes, and we hear this a lot about, we were fine between the boxes, as if my midfield's fine, but it's the defence and the attack which is crap. And you're like, well, Biggie yesterday scored from inside, about 8 yards out, and cleared the ball off the line. Yeah. And you're like, when you've got a really good midfield, they make your defence better and they make your attack better. It's just your midfield is so key. And Biggie was. I mean, I agree with you. I think I did say to Pritchard with about 20 minutes to go, if we'd have had a Marcus Tudgay type player in centre midfield, I probably would have brought them on at that point, because you could see Biggie he went for one challenge, and it was probably 55-45 in his favour, not massively in his favour. But you knew that there was that risk that he could get their second, and that pure risk of getting their second meant he didn't. He just accepted the fact he wasn't going to win the ball and closed the guy down instead. Where in the first half, you got the feeling he'd have just gone for it, and if he'd have missed it, he'd have missed it, and he'd have got on with it. And you've seen the yellow card again. It's like there were worse tackles out there yesterday than the one that actually got him booked. But yeah, I mean, again, it's like, he didn't. Still irritates me. Russell Slade came up with, Biggie, I can't trust him. And it's like, you trust in Kevin Foley, and you've got Biggie. Just not saying that Biggie's brilliant, but Biggie can have games like he had yesterday where he can be a dominant force on the pitch. And he's another one like George Thomas. He's had his big move to the Premier League. Potentially he's going to be playing for bottom tier club next season. He is better than that. but he needs to show that week in, week out, and he needs to show to managers that they can trust him in a 2. He can be the player that we all want him to be.
I just think as well, I would rather see us... I know this is a strange thing to say, but hopefully it makes sense. I would rather see us losing with a midfield of Biggie and Stevenson than I would with the midfield of Riley and Foley. Not only just because there are players and because they're young enough that they're still developing, albeit I could argue with Biggie that he's been around the block a little bit, but the types of players they are fascinating to watch. Ben Stevenson's so elegant and like his use of the ball is so fabulous. But Biggie's insane.
Yeah, he is, isn't he?
Lunatic,
and that's what we've been missing all season long. It's that side of the game that actually we have been missing, because we've had periods where we've been able to keep the ball well enough, and it's all that technical stuff, and we fanny about with formations and all this sort of stuff. But actually, the theme of the season's been, we've not competed, we've been out muscled, all this sort of stuff. Biggie doesn't get out muscled. When Biggie's in maniac mode, he'll do what he needs to get that ball back.
Yeah.
And it needs that sort of combination of him in there, other people around him who care equally. And I know it's a final, so there's a potential there where maybe that's what's G'd them up to those sort of levels of lunacy. But it's just, I think there's just too many of those players who in the team this season who just haven't had that kind of level of care. So you talk about the Andre Wrights and the Lewis Pages and these sort of players who, I'm sure technically they're in training when it isn't, they don't need to be crazy. They probably show the other up in some form. They're with their sort of sheer technique. But then when it comes to the game by game and when it actually matters, there's that combination, isn't it? Of it's the quality, but also how much do you really want it? And when it's really mattered in the last few games, people like Biggie have shown that it really matters to him. And Turnbull as well. He's our player, and I think he must have got fed up with people thinking he was shit. I think he knew he was a good player, but it just wasn't happening for him. He's put in that extra effort now. Now he cares. You see his reaction to the goal when it went in. He was absolutely distraught, but he picked himself up and he defended for his life again. It just makes a difference when they're your players. And that's not, I don't want to slag off loans entirely, because I think if they do have a place, but it's when you're pulling out players who care and can probably have a more positive impact at the detriment of everything else. So the whole Stevenson and Biggie thing, they make more sense, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, it's got to be, you know it's yourself. If you've got people around you who are negative, it's going to do you down. And one thing I didn't like about Moby at the start of the season, we discussed it on here, was this team isn't as good as the one I had last season.
Yeah,
and you're like, well, fuck off. Just even if you don't think they're as good, don't come out in public and tell me that they're not as good, because the players need to think that they're as good as you can gonna get.
Yes.
And you get the feeling with Mark Robbins, he's not going to be the sort of person. He's not going to tell them they're the best player in the world, but he's also not going to continually slag them off, or at least we hope. And you get the feeling with people like Jordan Turnbull. It's like sometimes it's just like, you are good, you are a good player. You just got to show it. But but this is how you can improve, or you can do this. And one thing that I bitched about at the start of the season, which he's definitely doing more now, he's just winning his individual battles. He's just so much more focused on winning that one-on-one. And yesterday, he just won everything that came into. I think the only one he sort of got slightly wrong was when, in the 93rd minute, or whatever, he sort of went under the ball and headed it direct. But it was just like, by that point, it was just enthusiasm and tiredness. But you were like, where has this player been? If that player had played every game this season, I'd be stressing about us losing him to the Championship.
Yeah.
And you watch that and you're like, that's why Swindon rated him so highly. Because that was a phenomenal performance yesterday. And it's not like it's his first of the season. He was that good against Wickham.
Yeah.
And you're like, but also, I think we also have to, because in about the 80th minute, we cleared the ball and Pritchard was like, everyone out. And I was like, no. That's not today against Oxford. The best thing we can do is keep a deep line, because their best opportunities during the entire game were when they caught us on the counter. So there was the one where the guy went through and tried to do a sort of chop behind his legs and got it wrong when Jordan Willis closed him down. There was the one where they went through one-on-one. There was a couple of other ones in the first half where they broke through. It was when they turned on us quickly, when we were in 2 banks of 4 with Ruben Lemares just being awkward in between the lines, Oxford didn't break us down once. And that was what it was all about. Yes, it was like 2 banks of 4. We know you want the ball. We know that's what you want. But we also know that you don't really have anyone that good who's going to break us down with a brilliant pass, or anyone who's going to sort of dribble past 5 or 6 players. So you can have the ball in front of us as long as you want, because we're going to deal with anything into our box. We're going to deal with.
Have we got anything to say about Stuart Bevan in terms of
That's so weird. You're just taking the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say.
I was just thinking through the team, like you probably were, and just thinking, who have we not given the word to? And while it was a hard one for him, because obviously he was playing with Ruben, and I don't think there's much of a sort of connection there, but the key moments, the technique for the volley,
I
got
outrageous.
It's just completely... like, that's quality.
Yeah.
I would have loved that to have gone in, but happy for Biggie too. And then also the pass for Reeds. The vision, just to know that Reed's got some pace about him, and just drop it into an area where he's moving on to. So 2 really key contributions from the striker, who could have easily gone missing in the game where he didn't really get too much to work with. But when he did get the ball, he made the most of it. And good on him.
I really, really like him. I think he's a really odd player where it looks like all of the game is in his head. Does that make sense? So I see that, yeah. I think he possibly limited physically, but he's just really smart. And I just thought everything about the second goal it's one of my favourite goals that we've scored ever. Not just for the context of it all, but the whole thing of it was that it was Bevan's intelligence to drop deep towards Reed in the first place that allows him to Reed releases the ball to him, and then he's able to make the run that gives him the space in the first place. And Bevan comes quite deep to facilitate that. But then he's on the deck when he plays that pass, and it's not only it's like a really beautifully weighted pass anyway, but to play it from the floor was like really good. But then I think Reed gets a tremendous amount of credit because George Thomas is miles away from him, isn't he? And it's a cross straight into his feet. That's, it's not a lump it into the area and see if he gets on the end of it. He plays it dead onto him, don't he?
And the thing is with that, when he plays that ball, as a winger, you see it all the time. They just pull it into a dangerous area, and you're kind of then absolved. If nothing happens, all you can do is point and say, "Look, I'll put it in the area. Someone's got to be there," and you've kind of done your job. No, he didn't. He actually played the ball back to the edge of the box, which it's just we don't do it when you're lacking confidence. You don't do those sort of things. But obviously, he was on his game yesterday, and he was thinking about trying to find people out, and just to finish it off with such quality as well. I mean, I'm with you actually. I do think that is one of my favourite goals I've seen score, and that's obviously because we're at Wembley. But still, magic. But
I had a bunch of people who aren't Cov fans, who are just football fans, who are mates of mine, who'd been watching the game, or they'd seen, the 5-second highlights of it and everything. And they were like, that George Thomas, is he good? I was like, no, it's mixed. And they were like, that is outrageously good. Everyone has watched it about 1 million times, haven't they? But it's the speed of foot and mind. Because the first touch is fabulous, obviously, but it seems to... I don't know how you'd get that much power on it with no anything. He just knew, didn't he? There's a really interesting instinct in that has been really absent from him for most of his time. I've always thought that the one thing I've wanted out of him was to be more decisive and more killer instincty, and that was outrageous killer instinct, weren't it? You just you never thought twice about it. And I think we touched on it slightly earlier, but it was something that you've said a lot, and I think is really, really ringing true with him and some of the other players, is it's about what's going on in their head, isn't it? And he looks like a player reborn over the last few weeks. And it's not because it doesn't look like he shouldn't be because he's out on the right, but he just looks like the shackles are off him ever so slightly, and that he just looks like he's, like, confidence-wise is there.
Well, you see it, don't you? You see it with the little things that he does. Where when George Thomas first came in the team, he was very sort of methodical in his play, and it was good first touch, move it off to someone else, and he was doing kind of what a sensible young player should do, is just sort of bed themselves into the team. The problem is when you're a striker and you play for a team that's struggling, people expect a lot, and I expect a lot from him, because you hear such good things, and you want to see more from them. You want to see them be prepared to make an impact on the game, and that's what he's doing now. So you see the little spins on the ball, these moments of class that you imagine he does all the time in training, and you imagine that's what Joe Cole saw when he was in training, just doing little 360s on it. And what I like about him is because it's not all the time. When he does it, it's like, oh, hello, George, what are you doing there? I've never seen you do that before. And it's just more and more of these little pieces of genuine class which are coming out in his game.
He did one touch in the second half where he took the ball out of the air. Well, I think both of his feet were off the ground at the same time and just cushioned the ball under control. And you're like, that's just natural God-given ability. Just if you could harness that in a way that and this is what we discussed last week. I don't have an issue with him on the right hand side of midfield. That's his fourth goal in about 5 or 6 games. He's rattling from that position. And it gives him a bit of space to work a little bit of magic as well. I just think if we could, as long as we keep hold of him, I don't have any issue with him playing right midfield next season. I think he could easily get over 10 goals, if not more. And you just think if you've got a couple of strikers, like Bevan's work rate is just phenomenal. The amount I think we discussed this, and Joey made a really pertinent point last week about Burgess is probably a better goalkeeper when you're in trouble, while Reece Charles Cooks is probably the better goalkeeper when you're on top. And you watch people like Bevan, and you're like, I can sort of see he's just a really good player when you're playing the sort of style we were yesterday, which is a bit more counter-attacking, and also when you're already 1-0 up, because he's someone who's just so willing to run the channels, and he's so willing to make a bad ball into a something ball. Like he won a corner in the second half by basically just putting a shit Oxford defender under pressure who hit the ball out of play for a corner, because he was waiting for the keeper to come. The keeper was waiting for the defender to deal with it, and neither of them dealt with it, so we ended up with a corner. And you're like, that's what I like out of Bevan. It's that anticipation of making defenders at this level make mistakes. And if you can get someone in alongside him who's going to get you the goals, then Bevan is the sort of player you can utilise. And another player I think had a very good game yesterday was Ruben Ramirez, who again he's a queer player. He just seems to win free kicks and just win decisions. But also he likes having people like George Thomas and Carl Reed around him, because they're if he's knocking the ball forward, they're already running. They're players who don't have to turn. They're already facing the goal, so they can run onto things. And we talk about often in the past. We talk about whether or not a player makes the pass with the run, or sometimes the pass makes the player move into that position. Like Stuart Bevan, basically, he hoped that Carl Reed was on his bike for that pass. He basically hit it down the line. I was watching and thinking, I watched it back on the highlights, and you're like, if Carl Reed doesn't make that run, Bevan looks a complete twat, because he's just basically just kicked the ball down the left wing in hope. But luckily, Kyle Reed's like, that's mine, I'm on that. And you see him have a little look up before he even gets to the ball to clock what's going on. And again, it's like, that's what a left winger does, or left midfielder does. If that had been Andre Wright or Kwame Thomas, they wouldn't have crossed that ball in, because they're not looking for that. That's not their instincts. Carl Reed, that is his, it's almost up there with the ball he put through for George Thomas for the goal against Wickham. It's just like, that's what he does have in his locker, if you can create the time and space for him. But going back to Ruben Ramirez, I think it's not easy for Ruben. He doesn't start that often. He's just sort of dropped in and out of games. But for the performance, for the type of player he is, he worked his fucking balls off.
That was it, wasn't it?
An outlet.
I think that's the part of the game, because I think first half altogether it was a lot of shaky behaviour from the players, and he was one of them in my mind where I thought he was he knew what he wanted to do, but his touch wasn't quite there. But then every now and again it would be there, and it was kind of hit and miss. But he, like all the players, just at the big moments, the moments when you really needed them to step up and do the right thing, they made a good pass, or they made that tackle that they wouldn't have normally made, and it all kind of came together, didn't it? Because I want to watch the whole match again, as many times as possible. Really, I'd like to watch it again. I think you get sort of whipped up into it all, and because of the sheer desire of the players, it feels like a really good performance. And not that I'm going to take anything away from them, but if I watch it again, I think I'll probably notice a little bit more of how it wasn't the most coherent performance. But I don't think it needed to be. I think we did the things that we needed to do right. And he was another one of those players who came in, because he could have easily put someone else in the team. But I get the feeling Robbins likes him.
And there was also, I haven't watched the highlights back. If you watch the Channel 5 30 minutes highlights, there's, I think we have a chance in the first half, and it's when they counter, and Jordan Willis goes. I think we've had a corner actually. We have a corner that's cleared, and they counter on us, and Jordan Willis is back, and the guy tries to do the shot back between his legs, and basically turns round, and I think he gets a shot away which is blocked, and all you can hear in the background is this cheer, and then Ryan Haynes runs to the left back position and punts it up the pitch, and all you can hear is a massive cheer. Yeah. And then their player heads it into the back of one of their other players, and it goes out for a throw-in, and you just hear another just massive cheer, and you're like, that's what you. I remember watching that and turning around to Jimmo and just going, how's that ended up? How's them being 3-1-1 or last ditch defending ended up with us having a throw-in in their half, and just went, you got to remember it's still League One. The players are still shit, and you're like, yeah, that's true. But also, if that had been at the Rico, there wouldn't have been, like, just having that atmosphere, even if it was just 10% of the fans were cheering every one of those things, that's still enough people to make a massive noise. But it wasn't yesterday. Yesterday it was like 75% of the fans were cheering everything that went our way. And that's got to be inspiring. It's just got to be. Like, you've got to want to walk out and you see that massive sky blue, and you've got to be thinking, yes, this is what I want to be doing with my career. Yeah. And there was that thing about, wasn't it the fourth highest attended game in Europe, which probably means it was the fourth highest attended game in the world at the weekend. And you're like, we're bottom of League One, and we had 45,000 people there, or 43, or whatever it was. Everyone really happy and excited, apart from my daughter who was asleep.
Can I drop?
I did love how.
Oh, sorry, go on,
Neil. Go on, Joey.
No, Neil, go.
I have just a very small point about the sort of the layout of the stadium. So I loved how we had half of the stadium, and then we sold more than half, so we overlapped over them as well. I mean, to do that, because that doesn't happen very often at Wembley, because usually when whoever can fill half the stadium, it's a huge match. So the other half is the other big team. So for us to take half a stadium, and actually, no, we need a few more, please. And we just didn't overlap over them. It was just such a great sight.
It looked fabulous. I wanted to quickly mention something about you talked about the positivity, Paul. There was a lot of discussion pre-game about the nature of any protests or anything like that. And I, for the record, wanted to say that I didn't see anything other than impeccably behaved people everywhere in the ground and outside the ground, and I'm just so happy that everyone took it in the spirit of which it was meant to be and didn't ruin it for anyone. And I believe there was still an element of protest. I saw some people holding up signs and stuff like that, and I don't think any of us were saying no protest at all, but it was about making sure that it didn't end up being that kids got hurt or that the atmosphere was poisonous, and I just didn't find a modicum of that. I just thought everybody was really in the right spirit. It was a beautiful day for it.
Yeah, it was just right. I mean, I saw a few people who were probably far too drunk to even understand that the match was going on, which I think it's a shame for them, because they just won't know what. I mean, imagine going to that game and missing things, missing goals. I know there's some guys behind us who were just so drunk. I guarantee they will not know they've gone to a football match, because they were just so drunk. But it was drunk out of just, they'd been up since 8, looking forward to enjoy the day. There was no sort of trying to ruin the day for anybody, was there? It was, and even the protest, I think it was kind of solidarity at the end. I think everybody wants Zizou out, so we let the game take its course, and I think there was just probably one quite loud chorus of "We want Zizou out" during the second half, which everybody embraced.
do,
really,
yeah.
it was, it's still a message we all want to get behind. But it wasn't a nasty sort of. It wasn't people fighting each other or anything like that, or bad words, or it was just, look, we're all in this together. Here's 45,000. Now's our moment to make a big sign and just remind you two up in the stand, Sapala and Fisher, that we don't want you in charge of our club.
Just fantastic, isn't it? I got told off because I was making a cup of tea, and my wife was like, "You can't still sing about Wembley," and it's like, "Come on, you gotta give me more than 24 hours. Like, give me 48." And put the flag up in the window so our neighbours who don't give two hoots know that we're all happy. And Mary's been telling everyone she meets, if I've got any criticism, is that Sky Blue Sam wasn't out on the pitch at the end of the game, so Kate was bitterly disappointed.
Oh no!
She wants to know where the elephant was. So, where's the elephant? Where's the elephant? It's like, chill. But just fantastic, isn't it? It's like, that's why we do it. It doesn't take away, it doesn't make up for the fact this season has been shit. But it is the sort of thing that, and I know it is the fact we don't go that often. That is only the third time we've been in our entire history, so it just means so much more. And if we talk about 45,000, we know there are other fans who refuse to go on principle. Yeah. So it's just, you want someone to just look at that and just go, that fan base, if someone could harness the power of that fan base, there is a really worthwhile football club there. And it's not going to take that much. Like, if Sisu left and a new owner came in and we started to be successful, it probably wouldn't take that much for us to get 15, 20,000 in the bottom tier of English football.
Of course not.
If you get in that, it's basically paying for itself in the first season, because you only have to pay players peanuts. I mean, most of them are from the academy anyway, so you don't have to pay that much. So if anyone's listening to this, we are quite, we're worthwhile buying, apart from all the other shit that goes on, like the fact we don't have a ground or academy or any of that shit. But other than that, we're well worth investing in.
I tell you what I thought was daft. A lot of people, obviously so many people went, and all our social media feeds were full of people who went. But actually, I know so many other Cov fans who didn't go for a lot of the reasons that you just mentioned, Paul, which is a little bit disappointing. But at the same time, it does just showcase that something's gone on. It's made them lose sort of faith in the club. But actually winning that game, they were still absolutely delighted by it. And I think you said, obviously, your kids now, they love football. I've seen so many other people say, "Oh, my son now wants to be George Thomas," or I think Chris Farrelly, someone I know, said that. It's just these sort of things. The idea that someone wants to be a Cov player now, it's just different. We haven't had it.
Mary's going to shave her head so she looks even more like Ryan Haynes.
Lovely. I like that.
Ginger's got to stick together. But you just want these things to occur. You tick these things off. I know you went with your family. I went with my, like, I don't know how. I asked Jane if my mum and dad celebrated. My mum and James, I don't know, I wasn't paying any attention. But my mum and dad were there, and it's the sort of thing you just want to do with the people you want to spend time with.
My mum cried. Yeah, I think it was at the end of the game, and she was kicking every ball. My mum's very excitable when it comes to football, and she was crying. And for a moment, I thought she was crying because of Cov, but then I thought, actually, no, she's being flanked by her son and her husband, the two men in her life, and she's probably just happy that we're not going to be whinging about football for a while. It's just the sheer relief that we're both happy for a little bit, because she bears the brunt of it a lot of time, just us two sat and moaning about it, and she has to pull up with it. So I mean, I was delighted for her in that sense. And actually, like you say, I had my whole family just all lined up. We were all completely delighted. We were mad with all the goals, and then I had friends behind me, and like you could turn around and, like you say, everywhere you looked, there was someone there you could embrace or give a high five, all that sort of stuff. Actually, I don't give high fives, but yeah, it made for such a special day.
I bumped into everyone as well.
Yeah.
So people that that you sort of half know from Twitter and all and whatever. It was all day, just either in the fan zone or, bear in mind there was 45,000 of us, and I don't know many people. It seemed like everyone that I'd ever half come into acquaintance with was like, "Oh, you're right." I was like, "Oh, it's good to see you." Right? Yeah.
I've been famous, isn't it?
Really? Well, no, not even that. Just what's it? I just couldn't believe. It was just really, really strange. But it was really, in fact, the whole day had got an air of fortune about it. Like it was ours, wasn't it? It was everything was falling right for us. And we've even
got our own version of Jonathan Green in now.
As it who is? Oh, Jesus Christ. Go on.
I can't remember his first name. I can't remember his surname.
Michael Felivi. Yeah.
We've now got a player who can sort of go, I've got this medal. It's like, but what did you do to deserve it? I was there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Were you
and he was loving it as well.
Were you definitely there, Michael? Yeah, I was, because I had a selfie stick out on the pitch.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Call out to the others, like people like Charles Cook. I do feel sorry for him all the way through the rounds, get us there, and couldn't quite make the final. But to be fair to all those on the bench, they were loving it just as much, weren't they? They were part of the squad, and it's a shame. I'm sure he would have loved to have played, but he's gonna play, I'm sure, a few more games, big games in his career.
Yeah, and
I'm so glad that Dion Kelly-Evans got on.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh God, yes.
You see one of the bits in the high. I think it was after Burge makes the save in the last minute where and so Dion Kelly-Evans just gone. You can just see him giving Burge like a primal scream of joy, and you're like,
he's such a kid, isn't he? He just loves it so much.
Oh, yeah. And I said this after the game. Like, I'm so glad I'm not Jordan Willis' biggest fan, but just to have another Cov kid lift the cup was nice. To have two players to score who actually I have affinity for. If it had been sort of Nathan Clark lifting the trophy and Callum Riley with the goals, it's like, don't give it. I'm glad we've won, but for it to be Biggie and George Thomas, who I said we went to Chesterfield, me and Jimbo, and it's like, and I remember having the discussion on the pod where I was like, you can tell that George Thomas is a player. You can see there's something there, and to actually just for him to do that, you're just like, at least I know something about football. At least I pinged one right. While Jordan Turnbull's having an absolute stormer at the other end of the pitch, making me look like a right twat. At least like George Thomas is proving me correct. And then it's like Ryan Haynes just having that game. I mean, another player I don't think we've really discussed at all, who hadn't, considering how long he's been out, considering the sort of tumultuous career that he's had, like Chris Stokes playing on the right-hand side of the centre-back partnership. He was just, just absolutely solid. And you could, again, another player, you could tell it just meant so much too.
I fancy him as a centre-back from now on.
Go on.
I fancy him as a centre-back from now on. I just think he was really good when he came in there last season. And I think he's... What we've needed is a player who can be a bit more robust at the back. And he's not fussed, is he? He's really solid and dependable. I like him there. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, he's lost a lot of weight as well, hasn't he? Have you noticed that? He's nowhere near as chunky as he used to be.
Oh, really?
No, he's looking pretty slimline, isn't he? I mean, it must be very difficult. I mean, Leon Lobjoy's just been taken on Northampton, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And I was having a discussion with someone on Twitter, and then we're going, well, why did we release him if he's got 60 goals in 30 appearances? And it was like his attitude stank. But why didn't we stick with him? Because for some people, you need to see the other side for it to go, I want to be a professional footballer. I don't want to do a 9-to-5 job and then play on a Saturday afternoon in front of 5 people. I've got the ability to play in front of thousands, so why am I doing it? And you get that with Chris Stokes. It's like, he obviously had a big move when he was a kid to Bolton. It didn't work out. He's gone into non-league and he's working his way back up. Okay. Maybe not back up, but he's a player who he wears his heart on his sleeve. You can tell how much it means. And you need different types of players within your team. You need those people who are going to run through a brick wall, and you need the people who can do the artistic painting at the end. That's what you need out of everyone in your squad. You can't just have one type of footballer in every position. It doesn't work. So to have that mix, and Stokes is just, hopefully he'll be here next season. Is the sort of player, again, I think he is a bit of a leader. You see that in him. He's got that personality, and that's another thing we've lacked, is we've had too many passive players who don't, this is just another step on their career. You get the feeling with Stokes, and I don't say that's the Stokes, get the feeling if Stokes was at any club, his personality would be the same. I'm not saying he's now got a massive affinity for Coventry. I just think you can see in the last 18 months that he's a player who wants to make those steps forward.
I feel like we've touched on everything game-wise and player-wise. Can I drop in maybe one final thing to wrap us up? Something that I can't believe has escaped having been mentioned. Is James Maddison watching the game in a Ben Stevenson shirt?
So good. I love seeing that.
See, that's not as cool as Klaus Jorgensen sat there watching the game in a Klaus Jorgensen shirt.
Was he really?
We walked past him. It was fantastic. He was just there in his own Klaus Jorgensen shirt when he played for us. He kept it pristine.
Yeah, surrounded by his small ginger children. I felt such an affinity for him at that moment.
Wow. That's
but yeah,
brilliant.
so and obviously, I think sort of former Players Association had 300 tickets.
Yeah, they took a bus down, didn't they?
Something like. I'm not sure if Ray Johnson was there, but there was a lot of former. Yeah, there was a sort of enough former players there, and you just like that's. I know, as I said, we get through so many players that most of them just like flit in and out. But you're nice to know that there are some players who are here to and actually have an affinity for the club, who aren't. It's just not another notch on the bedpost type thing. It's something that means something to them. So it's nice to see that, because I think the former player, and massive shout out to Former Players Association. I think they do an absolutely cracking job.
Yeah.
I believe, I could be correct on this, I think they were the first, Coventry were the first club to have it. I know there aren't that many clubs who do have the Former Players Day, which I believe our next Former Players Day is this Saturday, where there'll be like, you know, a lot of the former players who played in the cup final. You know, the 87 one, not the one last week. You know, the one the old people talk about, not as youngsters. So, you know, again, if this buzz is giving you up, the Peterborough game is another player. It's like you can show your appreciation for the players who played for us in the past, because, you know, a football club is both its history and its future.
Anything else before we finish off?
No, very happy.
I think that's everything. Guys, thanks for listening. Thank you very much, Paul.
Cheers, mate. Oh, one final thing. If anyone from the football club is listening to this, us three will do a fans commentary for the official DVD, and we won't swear.
Yeah, and I'll...
It will be kid friendly, but we're prepared to do it for literally no cost.
Yeah, I will produce it. We will do it in the same room together so that it sounds professional, and just let us do it, please. In fact, listeners, get on the campaign trail. We'll promise not to badger you about the Football Blogging Awards next year if you can do this for us. Thank you, Neil.
Cheers, mate.
If you want to get in touch with us, it's neelamptyshow@gmail.com, or on the Twitter, it's at neelamptyshow. Thanks again, and enjoy the cup. Bye.